A relationship that powered North America for a century just hit the rocks. You are watching the closest alliance on Earth crack in real time, and Washington cannot figure out how to stop it. Donald Trump has been threatening Canada with tariffs for months. He thought he held every card. He thought he could pressure America's quiet northern neighbor into total submission. But Mark Carney isn't playing that game. The Canadian Prime Minister looked at Trump's threats, looked at the leverage, and decided to walk away from the table, not quietly, loudly. And he is rebuilding Canada's entire trade strategy without the United States at the center. Trump's bluff just got called on a historic scale. The energy relationship between these two countries is fracturing, the trade war is accelerating, and the fallout is heading straight for your wallet. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact moment Trump lost his grip on Canada, how Carney flipped the board, and why American consumers are about to pay the price. Here is what you need to understand. This week in February 2026, the Trump administration has been pushing aggressive demands on Canada. The president wants tighter control over critical minerals. He wants Canada to prioritize American supply chains. He has publicly floated the idea of making Canada the 51st state. He has joked about buying Greenland and treating the Arctic like his personal playground. But behind the jokes, there is real pressure. Trump has threatened blanket tariffs. He has threatened to shut down the border. He has used every tool in his playbook to force Ottawa into compliance. The strategy is classic Trump. Threaten maximum pain, demand total surrender, wait for the other guy to crack. But Mark Carney did not crack. The Canadian Prime Minister looked at the pressure campaign and said no. Not just no, hell no. Carney did not just reject Trump's demands. He actively pivoted Canada's entire trade strategy away from American reliance. He pulled Canadian negotiators out of rooms. He got on the phone with Europe. He got on the phone with Asia. He told the world that Canadian resources are open for business, but not to bullies. This is shocking. It is a total rewrite of North American history. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of oil and natural gas to the United States. Period. You rely on Canadian crude to run your car. You rely on Canadian natural gas to heat your home. You rely on Canadian electricity to keep the lights on in border states. Canada supplies over 60% of America's crude oil imports. And Trump just gambled all of it on a bluff that Canada just aggressively called. You might be thinking this is just political theater, just words. It is not. The shift is real and the money is already moving. Let us look at the receipts. Receipt 1, the Supreme Court smackdown. Just days ago, the U.S. Supreme Court handed Trump a massive legal defeat. They struck down his use of emergency powers to slap tariffs on Canada and Mexico. The highest court in the land said his tactics were illegal under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Trump was furious. He immediately scrambled to invoke a dusty old law from 1974, Section 122 of the Trade Act, to force a new 10% global tariff anyway. But the damage to his leverage was already done. Carney saw the weakness. He saw that Trump's legal threats were hollow. He knew the U.S. court system was not backing the White House. That gave Canada the exact opening they needed to reject American pressure. Washington was divided. Ottawa was united. Receipt 2, the Buy Canadian pivot. While Trump was ranting on social media about tariffs, Carney was actually rewriting Canada's domestic economy. In December 2025, Canada officially launched the Buy Canadian policy. It is a massive multi-billion-dollar pivot away from U.S. reliance. The policy mandates that federal departments prioritize Canadian suppliers and Canadian content for major procurements. They are keeping their steel. They are keeping their lumber. They are funding their own local supply chains. They are effectively building a firewall against the American market. Reports say Canadian infrastructure projects are already rewriting their vendor lists. U.S. contractors are getting locked out. Billions in contracts are suddenly off limits to American companies. Receipt 3, the China EV deal. This is the one that really made Washington panic. Trump has been demanding the world cut ties with China. He demands absolute loyalty. But what did Carney do? In January 2026, Canada struck a deal with Beijing. Canada agreed to lower tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 100% down to 6.1%. In exchange, China dropped tariffs on Canadian agricultural products, specifically canola seed, down to 15% by March 1st. Carney bypassed the United States entirely. He found a new buyer for Canadian goods. Under the deal, Canada will allow 49,000 Chinese-made EVs into the country annually. Cargo ships that used to dock in Seattle or Los Angeles are now being courted by the port of Vancouver. Trump tried to isolate Canada. Instead, Canada isolated Trump. Receipt 4. The Davos Warning. A few weeks ago at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Mark Carney stood on stage and delivered a line that sent chills through the financial world. He did not yell, he did not rant, he just calmly stated, "We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Middle powers must act together because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu." He was talking directly about Donald Trump, and he was telling the rest of the world to form a wall against American aggression. He was signaling to Germany, to France, to Japan. The message was clear. America is no longer a reliable partner. We need to build our own network. Receipt 5. The market reaction. The moment Canada announced its trade pivot, look at what happened. Energy futures spiked. U.S. auto manufacturers sounded the alarm. The Canadian dollar stabilized, but U.S. consumer confidence took a hit. Investors realize that if Canada actually stops giving the U.S. preferential treatment on crude oil and critical minerals, the American industrial machine slows down. Wall Street knows who is actually in control of the resources right now, and it is not the guy sitting in the Oval Office. So why is this happening now? Why is the U.S. losing its grip on a country it used to dominate without breaking a sweat? Because Donald Trump is trapped by his own tactics. Trump only knows one way to negotiate. He escalates. He threatens. He makes demands that are so extreme he assumes the other side will beg for mercy. He treats international allies like rival real estate developers. He thinks he can just bankrupt them with legal fees and mean tweets. But countries are not buildings. You cannot just foreclose on a sovereign nation, especially not a nation that controls the natural resources you need to survive. Look at his behavior leading up to this collapse. Trump spent months mocking Canada. He kept joking about making Canada the 51st state. He thought he was being dominant, but he was actually just being reckless. And that recklessness has a massive cost. He threatened tariffs. So Canadian companies paused their investments in the U.S. Supply chains got nervous. Look at the Ambassador Bridge connecting Detroit and Windsor. 25% of all merchandise trade between the U.S. and Canada crosses that single bridge. Over $323 million in goods cross it every single day. When Trump threatens to shut down trade, the trucking companies panic. The auto plants in Michigan panic. They cannot build cars without Canadian parts. Prices on raw materials rose, and American voters started feeling the pinch at the checkout counter. Trump wanted leverage, but his leverage backfired. By constantly threatening his closest neighbor, he forced them to find a way to survive without him. When you threaten a man's house every single day, eventually he stops inviting you inside. He builds a taller fence. He buys a bigger lock. That is exactly what Canada did. Trump is losing control of the narrative because his threats are no longer working. He tried to bully a country that supplies a massive chunk of the U.S. economy. When the Supreme Court struck down his emergency tariffs, he looked weak. When Canada ignored his pressure, he looked irrelevant. He demands obedience. But the world is simply stepping back. Sources claim the West Wing is in total chaos over this. Trump is demanding his advisors find a way to punish Canada. But every option they present him just hurts American consumers more. If he taxes Canadian wood, American houses get more expensive to build. If he taxes Canadian aluminum, American beer cans cost more. If he taxes Canadian oil, gas prices explode. He has surrounded himself with advisors who tell him he is always right, but the market is telling him he is wrong. You cannot run a global economy on rage. Now look at Mark Carney. Mark Carney does not fight like Trump fights. Trump throws punches in the dark. Carney plays chess in the light. Carney is a former central banker. He ran the Bank of Canada. He ran the Bank of England. He understands global markets better than almost anyone on the planet. He knows that power is not about who screams the loudest on television. Power is about who controls the systems. When Trump issued his pressure campaign, Carney did not log on to social media to insult him. He did not hold a screaming press conference. Carney used systems. He used alliances. He used the cold, hard math of the global market. Carney understands that Canada has something the world desperately needs: critical minerals for batteries, fresh water, massive agricultural output, enormous energy reserves. He took Trump's pressure and he turned it into Canadian leverage. He is framing this entire conflict around one word: sovereignty. Carney is telling his people that Canada will not be bullied. He is telling the world that Canada is a stable, reliable partner. Investors crave stability. Markets hate chaos. Trump brings chaos. Carney brings stability. By walking away from American pressure, Carney sent a very clear message. He proved that Canada can survive the pain of a trade war better than the United States can survive the loss of its energy supply. He is playing the long game. Carney is building a coalition of middle powers. He is working with Europe. He is working with Asia. He is building a global fence around the Trump administration. He has total credibility with the markets. When Carney says he will redirect trade, the markets believe him. The bond yields shift. The currency markets adjust. When Trump says he will impose a tariff, the Supreme Court strikes it down and Wall Street rolls its eyes. The difference in competence is blinding. Carney is not just reacting to the news cycle, he is actively rewriting the rules of North American trade. He is slowly, methodically detaching Canada from the erratic swings of American politics, and Washington has absolutely no idea how to stop him. You need to understand what this means for you. Even if you do not care about Canada, Canada touches your life every single day. History is shifting right now, and it is shifting inside your home. Let us talk about prices. If Canada actually redirects its critical minerals away from the United States, the American auto industry hits a brick wall. You want an electric vehicle, you want a hybrid, you want advanced electronics. The parts rely on Canadian mining: cobalt, lithium, nickel. If Trump's tariffs and Carney's blockades take hold, the price of a car is going to skyrocket. Supply drops, demand stays the same, prices explode. That is simple math. Let us talk about gas and heating. Canada supplies over half of the crude oil imported by the United States. They supply a massive amount of natural gas to the Midwest and the Northeast. Look at the refineries in Texas and Louisiana. They rely on heavy crude piped all the way down from Alberta. If that supply chain is disrupted, your heating bill is going up. Your gas prices are going up. You will feel this every single time you pull up to the pump. Let us talk about the grocery store. Trade wars are not fought by politicians. They are paid for by citizens. A tariff is just a tax on you. When Trump slaps a tariff on Canadian goods, the Canadian company does not pay it. The American importer pays it, and then they pass that cost directly to you. Your bread, your meat, your produce, it all relies on cross-border logistics. But this is about more than just money out of your wallet. This is about global trust. For the last century, the United States was the undisputed leader of the free world. If you had a problem, you called Washington. Washington set the rules. Carney's move signals something terrifying for American power. It signals that America's closest ally no longer trusts American leadership. If Canada, the polite, quiet neighbor to the north, is willing to stand up, walk away from the table, and sever massive trade relationships, what do you think the rest of the world is going to do? Carney did not raise his voice. He raised the cost of ignoring Canada. He proved that the United States is no longer the only game in town. So where does this go from here? This July, the United States, Mexico, and Canada are scheduled to review their massive free trade agreement, the USMCA, or as Canada calls it, CUSMA. This review is mandated by Article 34.7 of the agreement. It was supposed to be a routine check-in, a simple signature. Now, it is going to be a bloodbath. There are three ways this plays out. Scenario A, the freeze-out. This is the most likely. Carney keeps stalling. He refuses to sign any new deals with the U.S. that give Trump what he wants. He continues to sign strategic deals with Europe and Asia. He lets Trump scream and shout, knowing that Trump is politically wounded by the Supreme Court and his own internal chaos. The U.S. economy slows down. Inflation creeps up as raw materials get harder to find. American businesses beg the White House to drop the tough act, and Trump takes the blame going into the midterms. Canada wins by simply standing still. Scenario B, the escalation. Trump refuses to lose. He ignores the courts. He uses dubious national security loopholes to shut down the border entirely. He blocks Canadian trucks. He tries to freeze Canadian assets. Carney responds by literally shutting off the pipelines that feed U.S. refineries. He cuts the power lines that feed the northern states. If this happens, it is a full-blown economic depression for border states. Factories shut down, store shelves go empty, prices double overnight. It is absolute chaos. It is mutual assured economic destruction. Scenario C, the sudden cave. Trump looks at the internal polling. He sees that his base is furious about gas prices. He realizes he cannot win a war of attrition against his own energy supplier. He quietly drops the pressure campaign. He claims a massive victory on social media, pretending he got what he wanted. But behind closed doors, his team begs Carney to come back to the table and restore the flows. This is the part where leaders usually calm it down. They pick up the phone. They find a compromise to save face. But Trump does not do calm, and Carney does not do favors. The uncertainty you are feeling right now is real, and it is dangerous. The old rules are gone. The greatest trick Donald Trump ever played was convincing his base that he held all the cards. Mark Carney just flipped the table and showed the world that Trump's hand was completely empty. The energy relationship is fracturing, the global market is shaking, and the U.S. is suddenly entirely alone on the world stage. Do you think Carney is protecting Canada, or is he daring Trump to overreact and destroy his own economy? Drop your take below and subscribe if you want the next update on this crisis before the mainstream headlines catch up. We are tracking this every single day, and you are not going to want to miss the next turn.